Smells yummy. Are you excited to fry up these nice slices of Chinese turnip cake? Mmm, bubble cow, yummy. You're excited to fry these up. Give this video a thumbs up. If you love dim sum and Chinese radish cake, make sure to subscribe. You could actually eat this whole cutting board of Chinese radish cake. Make sure to hit the bell icon to get immediate notifications as soon as I upload my next video. Now, let's get frying. Welcome to Yvonne Meets Food, where I share my passion for making food, eating food, as well as traveling the world to discover even more delicious food. Welcome back. It's another episode of Grandma's Recipes, and we are just around the corner from Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year. This year it's actually Year of the Ox, which is particularly special for me because I'm an ox baby. But anyway, so today we're going to be making a very special Chinese New Year dish, and that dish is called Chinese turnip cake, also known as Chinese style radish cake, also known as Lo Bak Go in Mandarin or Lo Bak Go in Cantonese. It's also a specialty at dim sum houses around the world and is much beloved in my family because it's super delicious, it's kind of custardy on the inside, and what makes it truly special when it's homemade is that we don't skimp on the filling. So you've been following me on Instagram and following my videos on YouTube, you'll probably know that my grandma is a huge inspiration in my love of food and my love of cooking. Every Chinese New Year was always a special time in our family because she would literally pull out everything and be able to make all these incredible traditional Chinese New Year dishes from scratch and literally with no recipes in hand. It would all be in her head, and one of the dishes she always made was this amazing Chinese turnip cake. Steamed to perfection and always pan fried in nice thick slices. It was always a treat during Chinese New Year, especially during breakfast and lunch and whenever we would have guests over during the New Year period. So I'm going to show you all the steps around how to make this dish. Of course, I've added some additional twists that I like just because I like these things. And so we're going to get started right now. So to get started, as per usual, we'll go through all of our ingredients. So as an FYI, Chinese turnip cake, like most Chinese New Year specialties, is very, very labor intensive. It's not necessarily a hard dish to make, but there are many steps. There's a lot of soaking, there's a lot of chopping, there's a lot of mincing, there's steaming, there's pan frying. And so you really have to love the dish to actually want to make this from scratch at home. However, don't let that deter you because whenever there's a will, there's a way. To make Chinese turnip cake, of course, we will need turnip. So I have about 5 cups of roughly grated Chinese turnip right here. So with Chinese turnip, you want to make sure that you have a nice big turnip that is heavy for its size. So the turnip that I got was about 2 pounds. And you want to wash it, of course, peel it, chop off the top, and then just grate it. You can grate it in a food processor. You can also grate it in a box grater, which is actually what I did. And so once you grate it, you'll have probably about this amount, which amounts to about 5 cups. Next, we go into our labor-intensive ingredients that will require steaming and soaking and chopping. And so different families prepare this differently, as well as different dim sum houses, but you have the choice for protein to either have Chinese bacon, lap yolk, or you can also use lap sham or Chinese sausage. So I tend to interchange them depending on what I have on hand. This time around, I had Chinese bacon. So you can typically get these at Chinese butcher shops if they make them from scratch there. You can also get them at Asian supermarkets, usually in the refrigerated section. This is quite fatty, and so it is bacon, of course, which means it's going to be fatty. And so the way that you want to prepare this is cut it into a few slices or a few big chunks, and then you're going to steam it over the stove. And then once you steam it, you want to then thinly slice it into paper thin sheets and then roughly mince them. One thing to note though with Chinese bacon, because it is bacon, there's going to be a huge fat cap on it, and so you don't want this to be overly rich. Granted, by definition, Chinese turnip cake is rich because it is a Chinese New Year dish, which means it's celebratory, but you don't want too much fat. So I tend to cut off the fat cap and then I just roughly mince it. So this is what it should look like. So this was about 12 ounces of Chinese bacon, and then once you remove the fat cap and steam it, it tends to shrink. And so we have roughly about 1 cup of Chinese bacon here minced. Next, we also have Chinese mushrooms or shiitake mushrooms that are dried. The dried ones are far more concentrated in flavor than the fresh ones. And so with the dried ones, we like to soak them in hot water for at least a few hours. That's gonna let them rehydrate. And in Chinese cuisine, there's very little to no waste, and so the soaking liquid is also something that we'll be using in cooking as well. On top of that, we're also using dried shrimps. So these are the teeny tiny Chinese dried shrimps. I also rehydrated this in about 1/3 of a cup of water, and then finally minced this as well. So this is where our soaking liquid is for the shrimp, as well as the dried scallops, which I've also have here. So if you have watched my taro cake or utoko video, you will have seen how I prepare both the shrimp as well as the scallops. And so these just need to be soaked like the mushrooms as well as shrimp. But with the scallops, the great thing about them is once they are soaked and rehydrated in water, you can basically just massage your fingers through them and then they start finely shredding into these nice, cute little threads. Next, we also have a little bit of freshness that I like to add. And so this is about 2 scallions that I've roughly chopped. And then for flavorings, we've got a little bit of sugar. So this is about just shy of 1 teaspoon of sugar, just to round out all the savories in this dish. About 1/4 teaspoon of white pepper, and then about 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt. And then to saute all those different filling ingredients, we've got about 2 teaspoons of Shaoxing wine. And then for the base, along with the turnip, we have 2 cups of rice flour. If you are in the US, a common rice flour brand is Erewhon, which is from Thailand, which is the one that I tend to buy. You can pick it up at most Asian grocery stores. So the first thing we're going to do is, now that we have our turnip all grated, we're going to add this to a pot with about 1 quart of water. That's about 4 cups. And so we're basically just going to allow it to boil and simmer for about 30 minutes. And once the 30 minutes is up, we will strain it and then reserve the cooking liquid, about 1 cup. While we allow the turnip to cool down just a bit, we're gonna focus on cooking the filling ingredients now. So I'm gonna add in the Chinese bacon first. You don't need oil because the bacon's gonna exude a ton of oil. So in goes all the bacon. Gonna let that sizzle and kind of glaze the pan a bit. Here we're just trying to render a little bit of the fat and also crisp up the bacon a bit. Sizzle, sizzle. So this looks pretty good. I'm gonna add in these scallops. Ooh, listen to that sizzle. And the shrimp and the minced mushroom caps. Oh yeah. Ooh, it's popping. Popping, popping. Mix that all up. Ooh, smells glorious. This looks pretty nice and toasty. Everything looks like nice and a little bit charred and a little bit crispy, crispy. So our last step is to add a little bit of the Shaoxing rice wine, just to be glazed, and then add the green onions, just for a little bit of freshness, and we're just going to cook that until it just wilts a little bit and then turn off the heat. So I removed the filling mixture from heat, and we're going to stir in the grated turnip that's already cooked. Ooh, just plops right in. Ooh, that really looks like a cake's coming. Cake's a coming. Okay peeps, the moment you've all been waiting for has finally arrived. We're finally putting together the cake. So I've got that radish filling mixture here, and we've also got the rice flour and all the soaking liquids as well as the seasonings here. So we're going to mix together the rice flour with all of these soaking liquids and then combine it with the radish filling. Okay peeps, this is what it should look like. Look how nice and thick that is. Oh yeah. Super thick. At this point, it's time to add all of the batter into the cake pan. So here I've got a 9-inch diameter cake pan. It's about 3 inches deep. If you have a cake pan that's a little bit smaller, maybe 8 inches, just make sure that it has about 3 to 4 inches in height, because this is going to be a very thick cake. This is a springform pan, and because we're steaming, I'm a little bit afraid that there might be water that might get into the cake pan. So I've actually lined my cake pan with foil. This is just some extra assurance for me, because I just get nervous about the water getting into the cake. Got the cake pan here, and we're gonna start adding it into the pan. I've also greased this as well. Make sure to grease. Okay, now it's time to steam. So I've already placed the cake into my makeshift steamer, and once it reaches a boil, we're going to let it steam for about 1 hour. So I will see you in 1 hour. We're back, and this is what it looks like now. As you can see, it's kind of poofed up a little bit. It's definitely very solid on the top, and I've actually let it cool down a little bit, which is why I can hold it so easily. And so if you know the drill with most of these Chinese New Year cakes, it's that we're not actually going to eat it right away. Ideally, you would let it sit overnight in the fridge just to allow the cake to get more solid, to allow for cleaner slices. We will let it sit in the fridge overnight, and I will see you tomorrow. Okay peeps, we're back. It's the next day, and we've allowed our radish cake to sit in the fridge overnight and get a bit more solid. And so this is what this big baby looks like. It's super heavy, it's very hefty in the cake pan. So the way that I like to loosen up the cake in the springform pan is I like to use a plastic fork to loosen it up. The reason I use a plastic fork is that I don't have to worry about scratching the cake pan. And so if you just loosen it, just run it around the edges, maybe 2 or 3 times, that'll make sure that your cake will come out all in one piece. You won't have to worry about pieces getting stuck to the side of the pan. Now we're going to loosen the springform and then pull it off. And ooh, look at that, beautiful. So now we need to flip it out of the cake pan, and then you just kind of want to pull it just a little bit on the sides, then go, yeah. See? For the method on how to cut a cake Chinese style, we are not going to cut it into regular slices. We're actually going to cut it into quarters first. So take a knife, cut it down the center, and ooh, this is super dense. Okay, so I've cut half. Now I'm going to go this way. Turn the board, cut it like this. Okay, so now I've got quarters. You can't see that yet, but you will see it in a second. Approximately got a quarter here. So the way that we're going to cut this is going to cut it like this. So maybe like about 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch slices. So I've laid these all out on the cutting board just so that they are easy for me to reach. So I've already got a pan set up on my stove. We're gonna set it on medium heat, and we'll also add a generous amount of oil. So I'm gonna start laying out the slices. Okay peeps, the time you've all been waiting for has finally arrived. We're gonna try our Lo Bak Go, or Chinese turnip cake, Chinese radish cake. Lo Bak Go. So many names for this delicious piece of Chinese radish cake. Smells delicious. Beautifully browned on the outside. Ooh, rip this piece off, and oh my goodness, you can see how moist and custardy it looks like on the inside. And it's just bursting with all those different fillings. No skimping, that's the best part of homemade. Okay, time to take a taste. This is a riff on one of my grandma's recipes, so hopefully I've done some justice by her. So here goes. That tastes perfect. That bite was packed with scallop, with shrimp, with Chinese bacon, and the radish base is super custardy and soft and moist. And that just pairs perfectly with a nice, crusty, crunchy brown outside. Perfect for dim sum, Chinese New Year gathering, perfect, Lo Bak Go, yummy. So that wraps up another episode of Grandma's Recipes, where I show you some of my takes on some of my most treasured and most loved recipes that my grandmother used to make for me when I was growing up. So for those of you who celebrate, Happy Chinese New Year, Happy Lunar New Year, Chúc mừng năm mới, 新年快乐, Gong hei fa choi, and wishing you and your family the best this year, as it's Year of the Ox. That's my year, hee hee. So thanks so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode and found it to be inspirational for you to make your own Chinese radish cake at home. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. I would love to hear what your favorite Lunar New Year treat is. Please remember to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get immediate notifications as soon as I upload my next video. Thanks again for watching and hope to see you next time. Don't forget to live yummy! Hey! You just tripped! Why is it sticking? It's not supposed to stick. No good. This cake is no good. This is not whiskey. This is mushroom soaking liquid. So make sure it's presentable. Crispy bottom.